When we say Shiva, generally he is always referred to as Swayambhu because there is no particular moment of creation, there is no particular source of creation. He is by himself. That's why the word Shiva means that which is not. That which is not does not happen at a particular time, does not happen through something, it is there. So Shiva was the creator. Brahma came and started creating. So various galaxies, the planets, the life forms, the humans, everything came forth out of him. Creation got into its grind of movement and Shiva, who was still, opened his eyes and started looking at the creation. As he observed the creation, he saw people were going through all kinds of struggles, pains, miseries, agony, various levels. Here and there was little bit of pleasure and joy. So when he saw this, he did not like the creation. He looked around, then he saw Brahma was so absolutely proud of his creation, he was looking at his creation with great pride and joy. Then he found 2 eyes were not enough, so he popped one more head to look at this side, he didn't want to miss anything. Then he popped one more and one more. Then he popped a 5th head, like a crown for his pride, not to look at anything in particular, just to crown himself with an extra head. When Shiva saw that this Brahma is so gloating about such a miserable creation, he got mad. He attacked Brahma and plucked his 5th head out. Now he has only 4, you know. Brahma screamed in pain and said, "Why are you doing this to me?" Then Shiva said, "Are you not ashamed of this creation that you have done? Everybody is suffering, people are going through all kinds of struggles. People are going through all kinds of miseries and pain and agony." Brahma said, "I have not created pain, nor have I created joy. I have just made it. It is up to them how they go through this. It is in their mind." Then Shiva said, "Who created the mind? That is also your creation." Brahma said, "The mind has no attributes of its own, it is just there. People can make joy out of it or misery out of it. People can make agony out of it or ecstasy out of it, it's left to them." Then Shiva sat down and looked at the creation very carefully, observed every creature, and then he wanted to know his own mind. So he closed his eyes and started looking at the nature of his own creation, his own mind. And when he realized, when his realization came to a certain absoluteness that actually creation is without attribute, each individual can make whatever he wants. The mind is attributeless. So when he realized this, then he became so ecstatic that he jumped and danced. He danced wildly out of his joy and ecstasy. As he danced intensely, with absolute involvement, when every cell in his body was a dance by itself, suddenly he realized that this dance is not necessary either. And he noticed, at the peak of his dance, there was absolute stillness. So he sat down as an ascetic, unmoving, utterly still. They say that stillness happened on this day, on the Mahashivaratri night is when it happened. From intensity of ecstasy to absolute annihilation and stillness, these two things he went on alternating. This is the imagery that you see. Sometimes he's dancing and exuberant, sometimes he's utterly still as if nothing exists. When we say Shiva is the destroyer, it is not about destroying the world, it's about destroying your world. Your world is essentially an accumulation of past experiences and impressions. Past is seeping into the present only through your thought process. And it is projecting itself into the future through your desiring process. What you know as your desire is essentially an exaggerated version of the past. So the destruction of the past is the essential nature, because if you want to know the grandeur of the creation, that is possible only through the presently existing moment that is here right now. This is the only doorway. In utter stillness, there is no past. In absolute movement, there is no past. These are the two fundamental passages that Shiva found to give access to that which is creation and the source of creation.
He used his occult power and brought large hail falling on the house. And they say more than 85 people were killed because of this hail. So someone at last told him that the only person who could help you this way would be Marpa. So he went in search of him. So the Hakini came in his vision and she said, Marpa has given you teaching, but without one fundamental aspect. Tibet as a culture, Tibet has a spiritual process. Some of the all-time greats in this culture have been a combination of spiritual process and occult. I think in the Tibetan culture, Milarepa stands out. So when Milarepa was young, he lost his father. His father had good lands and property and house, but once his father died, his uncle took over and made his young mother and his younger sister and him like slaves in the house and abused them and tortured them in many ways and took over the whole property. So he grew up with great sense of resentment and anger within himself. And when he became a youth, an adolescent, he left the family and went away. He left his younger sister and mother and went away, and he wanted to take revenge on his uncle and aunt who had showered an unspeakable amount of humiliation and torture upon these people. So he went to learn occult, and he mastered certain occult processes. And when he came back, after many years, both his mother and younger sister were dead. So he became even more angry. And he waited for an opportune moment when the uncle's son's wedding is to happen, and his uncle invited all his friends. And that day, he used his occult power and brought large hail falling on the house. And they say more than 85 people were killed because of this hail, including his uncle and aunt. The whole place was heaped with hail. And he felt very happy and justified for what he had done. But after some time, this started bothering him. If any human being is sensitive, the moment he misuses something, it'll bother him from within. You have to be in a certain level of grossness to continue that process, otherwise you cannot. Because the very nature of how this life is made, if there is a misuse at a very fundamental level, it is not conscience. I'm not talking about social conscience, I'm not talking about morality. Something much deeper will get disturbed. So similarly, for Milarepa, having done this, something deep inside him got disturbed. So he decided that he has to absolve himself of all this. He thought he has misused life in a very fundamental way. Whatever the justification, he has misused the fundamental process of life, so he wanted to seek the spiritual process. He wanted something with which in this life he will be freed. So he went in search of masters and he went to many people, and all of them were sincere enough to admit that they did not know how to attain realization in this life. They said, we can teach you something which will evolve you. Practice compassion, practice kindness, practice love, slowly you will evolve from lifetime to lifetime. He was not satisfied with those things, and still a certain level of anger was still burning within him. A certain regret, certain resentment, certain mixture of anger, a whole cocktail was going within him. So someone at last told him that the only person who could help you this way would be Marpa. So he went in search of him. When he approached the town in which Marpa lived, he met a bunch of children and he asked them. Marpa was known as the translator because he was titled as a translator because he was the one who translated all the great tantric Indian texts into Tibetan language. So he was always known and revered as the translator because he brought that knowledge here. His credentials were 3 times he had traveled to India and met certain masters and gotten teachings from them, methods from them, and the texts from them, and he had translated that to local languages. So when he asked, where is Marpa the translator, one child said, I know where he is, and he took him to the field where Marpa was ploughing the field. So when he took him there, Marpa looked at him and left the plough in the field and gave him a gourd of beer, locally brewed beer. He said, drink this and then plough the land. So Milarepa drank that and ploughed. Marpa left and a child stood there. After he completed the ploughing, he didn't know what to do. He stood there. Then the child came and said, it's time for you to come. The child took him home and then he realized this child was Marpa's own son. Then Marpa put him through all kinds of physical activity. Milarepa bowed down to him and asked him, I want Dhamma from you. That kind of Dhamma. Dhamma means a method or a process which will make me realize and become liberated in this life. I don't want to go to the next one. And also, please be kind enough to give me food and shelter. So Marpa said, you choose. If you want, I'll give you food and shelter. Choose Dhamma elsewhere. Look for Dhamma elsewhere. Or I'll give you Dhamma, you get your food and shelter somewhere else. This is the choice. So Milarepa said, okay, I want your Dhamma, I'll get my own food and shelter. So he went out begging. This is a very spirited man, whatever he does, he little overdoes. So he went out begging and he went far. And he gathered sacks of wheat. He's gathering enough for the whole year so that he can sit here and learn his Dhamma. So he collected a lot, then he sold some of the wheat and bought a copper pot with 4 handles on the side. That's a traditional kind of vessel to cook his own food. Then this heavy load, very heavy load he carried and walked a long distance back, came into Marpa's house and dropped it with one big boom. Marpa was having his lunch. Halfway through the lunch, he left his lunch, came out and said, "It looks like you're very angry. Just now, with your wheat and this vessel, you shook the whole house. It looks like you're out to destroy this house also as you destroyed your uncle's house. Just leave. Enough." Then Milarepa begged, "Please, you asked me to get my food, I got it. It was too heavy, I dropped it." So Marpa said, "Nothing doing, you're out. Because you didn't keep the sack right. You threw it down. You're not fit. So you stay out, do chores, plow my field, clean my house, do whatever." For years he did this. So periodically other students came and they were initiated into many things, but Milarepa got not a single initiation, not a single teaching. He did all the hard work. More than 8 years he worked without a single teaching or initiation. Everybody else were coming for a day, they were getting initiated and they're going, but he waited and waited and waited, doing all kinds of hard work. Then one day he came and sneaked in and sat in a satsang like this, where he is not supposed to. Marpa was sitting with his eyes closed, so he sneaked in and sat with other students, hoping to be initiated. So Marpa was sitting with eyes closed. He picked up his staff, walked with eyes closed and thrashed Milarepa. He was sitting among the crowd. He came and really thrashed him and physically took him out and threw him out of the place. This happened again and again. He gave certain space, and again when another initiation is happening, he sneaked in, hoping this time he will get it. More than 13 years passed, he didn't get anything. Then one day he pleaded with Marpa's wife, who was taking sympathy with him, who was like his mother, and he begged her, "Please tell him to give me something. Just one teaching, one little meditation. I know nothing, I'm sitting here for so many years." So she used her good offices with her husband. Then okay, Marpa said, "First let him build a house for my son. Single-handedly, he must build a house. I want a 3-cornered house." So he built a 3-cornered house. It took 2 years. Then he looked at it and said, 3-cornered house is not suitable for my son, build a 4-cornered house. He built a 4-cornered house. Then he said, that's not good, build a 5-cornered house. Like this years passed. He worked single-handedly, building these buildings all over the place. Then he said, that is okay, but I need a 60-foot high tower for my son's house. So he built 60-foot high towers, 4 towers at 4 corners of the house. By then he was aging. Then one day he went and crawled at the mother's feet and asked, please do something, my life is passing away. I have not even been given a single teaching. What is this? I know I have done horrible things in the past, I have misused occult and things, but haven't I done enough? So taking little compassion out of place, she took Marpa's letterhead and wrote a letter to another monk who was also empowered to initiate, as if it is Marpa's letter with the necessary seal and everything. So it gave to Milarepa, and Milarepa went to that monk and got initiated. But then nothing happened. Then that monk was shocked. When I initiate something should happen, nothing is happening, what to do? Then Marpa came to know and he called him and got the monk also decertified. Then in utmost remorse, Milarepa was about to commit suicide. Then Marpa called him and then he said, okay, sit down. And he gave him teaching. He said, for what you have committed in the past, I was just giving you methods to work it out, but you are taking your time unnecessarily. If you just go by my word, this would have been over long ago. But you do everything and you take one sneaky way out. Because of that one sneaky way, you're postponing everything for many years. Now your remorse is truly touching the very core of your being. You're willing to die for it. Now you're ready. And he initiated him. And on the very third day, Milarepa had a vision of Dakini. You heard of Dakini? In the tantric technology of doing things, for every chakra they created one goddess, a female form, which has been consecrated and made alive, which can be called forth to do things. Nobody does anything significant without the help of these forces. So Dakini came in his vision and she said, Marpa has given you teaching, but without one fundamental aspect, which he himself does not know. You seek it from him. Ask him if he knows. Then Milarepa went to where Marpa was. Marpa looked at him and said, why are you here? Then he said, Dakini came and said this, I don't know whether this is for real or this is my imagination, but this is what happened, so I had to come and ask you. Marpa bowed down to Milarepa and said, even I don't have the teaching, so let's go back to India. Both of them traveled back to India, to Marpa's guru, who was somewhere in the border of Nepal and Bihar. So they walked all the way, they went there, and when Marpa said this to the guru, that like this Dakini came and said that this particular teaching has not happened, the guru looked at him and said, this is not yours. This could not have happened to you. How did you get this? Then Marpa said, this is not me, this is one of my disciples. Then the guru turned towards Tibet and bowed down. He said, at last in the dark north, one little light has happened. So he called Milarepa and Marpa and gave the whole teaching as to how to attain to one's fullest enlightenment in this life. And they came back, and Marpa, who started as a guru, became like a disciple to Milarepa. Milarepa became a shining light in the Tibetan culture. A lot of things that have been done in the last 300–400 years in the Tibetan culture essentially is from the basis that Milarepa set up. You heard of Ashtavakra? Ashtavakra means 8 types of deformities he had in his body. He was born this way because he was cursed by his own father when he was in his mother's womb. His father was also a very famous sage and a great scholar, acquired many things, we don't know how many lifetimes. When the wife is pregnant, it's part of the culture that when a woman is pregnant, she must hear all the scriptures and all the good things and knowledge, because she should not hear wrong things, negative things. She should hear nice, pleasant music, she must hear good things, people read Bhagavad Gita to her, Vedas to her. Whether she understands or not, it doesn't matter. The child will listen. Slowly, its evolution will be affected by what the child listens to.
So, as a part of it, the father was saying something, explaining something about a scripture. Then suddenly they heard a voice disagreeing with what the father was saying. The child from within the womb said, "No, that's not it, you didn't get it right." The father got so incensed by this, an unborn son, already negating him. It should happen after he's 18 years of age. An unborn one already saying you are wrong. It happens when they come to teenage. He got so incensed and cursed him that let him have eight types of deformities. So he was born almost an inhuman form, twisted out body. So he was named as Ashtavakra, 8 types of deformities. Father was he was in the king's court, in King Janaka's court, as a scholar, a very accomplished scholar. King Janaka has such a thirst to know. He wants to become enlightened. So he gathered all kinds of sages and scholars and the works, anybody he could get anywhere, he brought them into his court and he wanted to listen to their teachings. And he himself became an accomplished yogi over a period of time, but he still not realized. Then one day, Ashtavakra's father took this little boy to the court. When the king, Janaka, saw Ashtavakra, Ashtavakra held the king's eyes. When the king looks at you, you're supposed to look down, which all the scholars and everybody do. But this boy just looked at him straight. So Janaka was little taken back. Such a distorted body, he almost has not even a human-looking body. But the boy's eyes were such, he just stared at the king and said, "All these scholars who are sitting here, with all due respect to all of them, none of these people, including my father, will be able to give you what you're looking for." The king was flabbergasted, this 8 or 9-year-old boy saying this to him, and his father wanted to naskify him because this fellow has this habit of saying these things right from the beginning. Then Ashtavakra, at the age of 12 or 14, he left the family and went into the forest. One day King Janaka went hunting with his retinue of soldiers in the works. And in the heat of hunt, he got separated from the soldiers and he got lost in this forest. Then he found Ashtavakra sitting in the jungle. So King Janaka, sitting on his horse, looked at him and said, "You are here?" He said, "Yes." And Ashtavakra, in his own way, said, "And it's me who has drawn you here, from your people, away from all of them. If you're willing to just take instructions from me, I'll get you there, what you're looking for." So King Janaka wanted to ask, "Did you see any of my soldiers? Did you see any of the royal retinue around?" Because he wants to find them and go back home. So Ashtavakra asked, "What is more important for you? What you've been claiming all your life that you want, or you want to find your way home? Which way is it?" This hit the king so much. He said, "No, that's the only thing I want, I don't care whether I go back to the palace or not." And he wanted to get down from the horse. He took one leg off the stirrup and he was up, one leg here. Ashtavakra said, "Just stop. Stop right there." When he was just getting off the horse, he asked him to just stop there, stuck in an uncomfortable position on the horse like this, one leg up, one leg in the stirrup. He said, "Just stay there." This is the first act of Zen, okay? This is some 8,000 years ago. And Janaka realized in that uncomfortable position, he suddenly burst into enlightenment. He got down and bowed down to Ashtavakra and wanted to stay there. After a certain period of time, Ashtavakra said, "You go back to the palace." King Janaka said, "No way, the palace means nothing to me, I am not going back." So Ashtavakra said, "The question is not about whether you want to be a king or not. The people of this nation need an enlightened king, so you must go." So he sent him back.
Matsyendranath and Dattatreya have been held as the greatest yogis in the tradition. A pot, a jug of wine on one lap and a young woman on his other lap. He just looked. Dattatreya looked drunk. This is a demo for Parashuram, because he's a man of immense capabilities. In certain schools of yoga, they classify yogis into three categories. These are referred to as Mandha, Madhyama and Uttama. Mandha means he's tasted what it means to be conscious. He has tasted the source of creation, he has known the oneness, but not able to keep it throughout the day. He needs to remind himself. When he reminds himself, when he's aware, he's there. When he is not aware, he loses that whole experience. Nobody can be effortfully conscious for 24 hours. If you're making an effort to be conscious, if you can manage it for a few seconds or minutes, it's a big thing. Otherwise it'll go all over the place. So the first stage of a yogi is called Mandha. The second stage of the yogi is called Madhyama, that means medium. He is constantly in perception, but the inner dimension and what's beyond is in perception, but what is here, he cannot manage. You have, being in India, definitely you have heard of various yogis who were worshipped, but they were absolutely incapable of anything in their life. Many of them at a certain phases of their life, they even had to be reminded to eat and go to the toilet. Even that had to be taken care of. They became like helpless infants. But they were in a fantastic state within themselves. But however fantastic it is, you cannot remain in that state because being disconnected from the physical world, you cannot remain in the physical body. If you have to maintain your physical body, you must have some competence with the physical world, otherwise you cannot manage it. The third state of a yogi is constantly in perception of the ultimate. At the same time, he is perfectly in tune with the outside. To an extent, you do not know whether he is really a yogi or not. Dattatreya, you heard of Dattatreya?
Dattatreya? Oh, that's some good news. Because Matsyendranath and Dattatreya have been held as the greatest yogis in the tradition among all a galaxy of realized beings. These two have been held as the greatest among them. Matsyendranath, because of the way he existed, people consider him as the reincarnation of Shiva. With Dattatreya, people around him said he is the reincarnation of Shiva, Vishnu and Brahma at once. This is people's way of expressing it. When they saw something about that person, though he's in the human form, nothing human at all. This doesn't mean he's inhuman. Yes, definitely not human. So when they saw such qualities, they could only compare him to Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma like this. They said he is the reincarnation of all the three. So sometimes you will see Dattatreya's images with 3 heads because he is the reincarnation of all the three. Dattatreya lived a very enigmatic life. Even today, the clan which grew out of him, they follow certain things, a powerful clan. You might have… definitely you've heard of Kanfats. These are the worshippers of Dattatreya. Even today they walk around with black dogs. Dattatreya always had black dogs around him, spotlessly black. But I will not go into this dog business. There's a whole lot of things about it. He used dog in a certain way. You know, if you have a dog at home, he's little more perceptive than you. Yes or no? In smell, in hearing, in vision, he seems to be little better than you. So Dattatreya took the dog to a different level and he chose those dogs which were completely jet black. Even today, the Kanfats have these dogs with them. They won't let their dogs walk, they will carry them on their shoulders and walk, big dogs. Because it was Dattatreya's pet, so they treat him very special. After 200 generations, still what he set up still runs. Still it's one of the largest clans of spiritual seekers. When Parashurama, the axe hacker, anything that he saw, he hacked up with his axe, including his mother. A man of very volatile emotions. In many ways, without participating in it, Parashuram decided the fate of Kurukshetra war. He fixed Karna, the very beginning. He had enormous capabilities, but his emotional volatility did not allow him to perceive the divine every moment of his life, off and on, off and on. Bad weather most of the time. So he went to many gurus or teachers. When he found they did not have what he is looking for, he hacked them. Yes. And then he came towards Dattatreya. People told him, Dattatreya is your answer. He came, still with his axe. When he was coming towards Dattatreya's place,
Many other spiritual seekers had gathered. They looked into his ashram and were running away. This is not a spiritual place. When Parashuram walked in to Dattatreya's abode, he looked. Here was a man who was sitting with a pot, a jug of wine on one lap and a young woman on his other lap. He just looked. Dattatreya looked drunk. Parashuram looked at him, put his axe down for the last time and prostrated himself. Everybody else left. The moment he prostrated, the jug of wine and the woman disappeared, and Dattatreya was just sitting there with his dog at his feet. Parashuram found his salvation to Dattatreya. This is a demo for Parashuram because he's a man of immense capabilities, but this capability is finding expression in anger, finding expression in a state of emotional volatility that it always finds negative expression, tremendous power, finding negative expression. So Dattatreya employed a certain ploy, and when Parashurama could see beyond the wine and the woman and his drunkenness and still know that Dattatreya was constantly in touch with the divine, that moment became his opening. If he was that perceptive right through his life, a lot of people would have been spared the axe.
There was a certain yogi who practiced very severe austerities from normal food. After a while, he shifted just to fruit diet and then gave up the fruits and just went on leaf and root diet and lived a very pious life. On a certain day, when he was cutting grass in the forest to make a thatch or to make a roof for his little hut in which he lived, accidentally he chopped off his own finger. When he chopped off his finger, to his amazement, he saw, instead of blood coming out of his severed finger, the sap of a plant or a flower was coming out of his finger. Then he felt very satisfied that his austerities, his sadhana has made him so pure that instead of bleeding, he is oozing the sap of a plant. It brought him much pride, and this vanity took over and he started thinking, I am the purest of the yogis, because now he's turned into a vegetable. Shiva noticed this yogi of great accomplishment falling prey to such simple vanity. So Shiva took on the form of a yogi and came this way, and he saw a great smile of satisfaction on the yogi's face and inquired, what is this big smile about? What are you so self-satisfied about? The yogi said, don't you know, the news has spread everywhere already that I am the purest yogi in the world because look at my finger, I don't bleed anymore. The sap of a plant or a flower or a fruit is coming out of me. I have become very pure, don't you know? Then Shiva said, animals eat leaves and roots and make blood and flesh out of it. All of it, when it is burnt, turns into ashes. So there is nothing to be very proud of oozing plant sap. That which was a plant becomes an animal. That which is a man or an animal or a plant ultimately becomes ash. Look at me, he said, and chopped off his own finger. And ash came out of his body, and every pore in his body started oozing this ash, displaying that Shiva, a yogi, a true yogi, constantly lives death as he lives life. Only that one who is constantly aware of the mortal nature of his existence, who constantly knows that the flesh and blood that he carries is the ashes of the planet. Only that one is truly pure. It is because of this that Shiva is always depicted as ash smeared. He did not smear ashes upon himself. He oozed ash out of every pore of his body, displaying the ultimate dispassion that he is.
The fundamental tool is this, that there is a certain dispassion. Passion for everybody, dispassion for myself. If this one thing arises in your life, you will see better everything. If you see everything better, if you see the floor that you're walking on better, will you be more balanced? If you're more balanced, if you're really balanced, can you do many more things? Can you dance a little more? That's about it. So everything that you do, if it's passionate, within you, the flower of dispassion will flower because you will see dispassion is the greatest flower.